just about there, Barbara. It's loading. We're live. We can start the meeting. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to call the Water Committee meeting to order Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 at 9 a.m. So let's just get right into it and let's go into our first item.
All right, can we check to see if John's connected, Mr. Curtin? Are we able to, John?
If you can hear me, I am.
Yeah, we can hear you.
And before we start, I need to recuse myself, so.
Okay,
Step out. Good luck, John.
okay, thank you, Director Crooms. Yeah.
Okay, so Barbara, this may be familiar with you, to you. We came to you in probably about a year ago, maybe, to the Water Committee to discuss this project. Mr. Curtin owns a couple parcels along with other people off of Harvard Mine Road, and he was looking to get water service to his parcels. The committee at the time directed staff to kind of pursue this as a water main extension. They felt that that made the most sense given the layout. So that's what we're doing. We're coming back to you as a water main extension and with a developer agreement. So I'll just read through my staff report and then take any questions. So John and Amy Curtin and Michael and Amber Dosher, they own two parcels in Jamestown off of Harvard Mine Road. One property is about 1,500 feet from our nearest main, which is in Harvard Mine Road right away. The Dosher property is about 740 feet from that water main. They are requesting service through a public water main. That would be about 740 feet in length. Through an existing driveway that currently has a public utility over it. From the Dosher property, the Curtins would request service through a private water line over the Dosher property. That line would be about 760 feet. So not only would the board eventually, if this moves to the board, not only would they be approving a developer agreement for this water main, but also a variance for the Curtin parcel. The developer agreement has, all your standard provisions for insurance, that the contractor be properly licensed, that plans will be reviewed. It has provisions for capacity fees. It also has special provisions for an area of benefit over some of the intervening parcels or adjacent parcels to the proposed main, and also additional easement from the end of the proposed main to some parcels to the west. We see the potential, because it's an industrial commercial area, that fire flow requirements might be higher than normal, and the main is the location that you'll see in the exhibit map was a pretty good location for a potential loop. So we felt it made sense to ask for that easement as part of the project.
Going a long way around here.
Yeah, so in the map there, you'll see the dark dash line. That's the proposed water main. You can barely see at the end of the main, you'll see three circles. The dark circle with the dashes, that's a potential hydrant. The two circles side by side, those are the water meter locations. One would be the Doshers, which would be right on their property line. The other would be for the Curtins. You can't see it too well from our perspective, but you'll see from one of those little circles a dashed line that sort of parallels the driveway to the Curtin parcel. Are you able to drag it down to the right, Eric? Yep, so no problem. So you can kind of see across the Dosher parcel, there's a private water line, the exact alignment John can share if need be, but this gives you an idea of what they're proposing to do. At the bottom of the Dosher parcel, you'll see sort of a hatched area. Again, this is sort of a preliminary idea of where the water main might be. We still haven't seen plans yet, so, so John will sort of drive that a little bit of what he wants to do, and then we'll approve the plans. But it's something like this, this area where the hatched is just a really, looks like it was almost bladed at one point, like a road or something. It definitely looks like it was intended to, almost as if it was intended to be a future water line easement. So, and the parcels to the west are where really the development is gonna occur. So with that, I mean, we can either have John make some comments, or you can ask some questions if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the really thorough write-up that puts the context in here. I really appreciate that. So the Dozier property, that's gonna have a private water line through it.
Correct,
So the public main stops at the entrance to their property.
correct.
Okay, so then the Curtin property will be served then just by private?
Yes,
Okay, and then nothing beyond that?
correct.
Okay, so when you wanna loop it, it won't go through those parcels, it's gonna go along the southern property boundary of Dozier,
Correct,
and then keep going west over to High School Road.
right. And you can see it maybe at the very bottom left corner, that's where our existing, there's actually some private line there that was intended to maybe in the future, when development occurs, be converted to a public line as well. But our public main is further to the south. So the looping would basically continue from the west down High School Road. Yeah, so that's been the idea.
Okay, thank you. Then, just another question. So those other parcels in that little dotted area that sort of looks like a funky state of California look?
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, those parcels will be then served by the, public water.
They could be, so they'll be adjacent to it. So should they choose to want to work with the Doziers and Curtins, they could pay to put in water services, and we could put those in the ground, and they would sit there until such point that they wanted to pay capacity fees and connect. We're gonna set up the reimbursement either way, so that it gets documented that if someone does connect in the future, in the next 10 years, they would pay the Doziers and the Curtins back a proportional share based upon acreage.
So okay,
It's not a requirement that they connect.
okay. So the part, I understand the 700 and something feet through the Dozier property is a private line, I understand that. But the one that's going to it from Harvard Mine or where, 108, whatever, down there, is that a public?
Yes,
Okay, so if it's public, those parcels they would just come to us.
Correct.
They wouldn't need anything from the Doziers.
correct. However, if they connected, then when I process their application, I have my reimbursement binders, which this would be in there. And I would say, oh, there's a X number of dollar reimbursement that we collected, and then
You can credit it back to
we actually deposit their check, issue a different check to
Okay.
the Doziers and the Curtins.
Good, thanks, good, now I get it, okay. It's just fairness here, yeah, okay. Well, and then, I didn't really realize this Whiskey Lake, that's from the mine, correct?
Correct.
That big
Mhm.
reservoir. Well, that could also be used for fire flow, I would imagine, as well. I mean, we have an option of some untreated water rather than using treated water. And then for sewer, how is this area being served? Just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be Jamestown Sanitary's service area.
Okay,
My guess is they're probably doing septics, but we haven't discussed.
Antonio, if I may,
Sure, go ahead.
those are all on septic.
okay,
There you go.
we call it groundwater recharge. Yeah, great. All right, well, I have no further questions on this. It looks like, you've covered the due diligence in terms of what the developer's responsible for. So I appreciate you being here, by the way, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
John, do you have any comments that you want to add?
No, I don't think so. The alignment there on the curtain line going through the Dosher property is a little bit, it's not exactly right there. It's just a little east of there, but I don't think that that's a problem.
Yeah, it's conceptual, so ultimately you're gonna kind of present your plan, how you want to do it, you know, and then we'll mark up the plan. So it's just gives us an idea of the concept of what we're looking at trying to do, so.
Right. There's an additional easement just to the east of there. We would follow that easement up to my property.
Okay.
One last question. When I look at the aerial view of the map, it looks like there are some parcels divided in a row north of the northwest of the Curtin property. How would those be eventually served? Yeah, those. Yeah, where your cursor is, yes.
So they would continue on High School Road, basically. Yeah.
So High School Road has a line then?
No, it doesn't have anything. It sort of ends the gray shaded area. See,
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Here we are, we're back to the,
Sideways map.
yeah, that's just, bear with me here, it's gonna take a few, because I don't have the other option. All right, Antonio, you want it, right?
Sure. So they would extend from roughly about this point and then work their way up the road. Wow, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, you gotta look at it on here because
Okay.
there's a delay.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, so it would be extended up here. So if this loop came through, they would be coming from the loop point on up. Up here, I don't remember off the top of my head now, but it's county owns some of it, I think. Some other entity like that owns some land up there as well, I think. John, you might know this better than me, but they're your neighbors.
Yeah.
John does
Yeah.
own a piece.
County owns some of that property, and so does Dave Caslin.
That's right, that's right. The piece right here, John also owns, but he doesn't intend to build on it,
Okay,
at least at this point.
just, looking out for, I'm sure you guys are too, looking out for making it as clean as possible for the future.
Right.
Yeah,
So we ended up, Matt and I have met with John twice out there, and going further, if you were out there, we definitely don't want a water main continue on up this direction. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just a lot of water main for not much in location that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Here with the road already being there, and it being industrial, it just seems to make a lot more sense to come up from the road. So,
well, I have no further questions and think this can move forward to the board.
So Barbara, that's your committee recommendation, just to move it, make it go to a regular board meeting?
Well, I'm a committee of one, I don't know how that works. I just think that right now I'm just prepared to say, this sounds reasonable, and let's bring it up for larger discussion and approval.
Thank you for the support.
Thank
you.
you, John, and thanks for all your work on this. You put a lot of effort into it, and I appreciate your willingness to work with us.
And you as well, Antonio. Thanks for all the hard work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Okay, so Tamara's the next item.
There's no.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'll just go ahead and say, read number 2, review of amendment for auxiliary water service to Tamarins Estates Mobile Home Park, LIC Tamarin Partners.
Okay, so this item is an amendment to an existing, I'll call it emergency or it's an auxiliary water service agreement to Tamarin Estates Mobile Home Park. The park is served by a well, but they have intermittent issues. I'm not sure if it's necessarily dry well, but maybe maintenance issues. And they've historically, for several years, had an emergency water service. When it was up for renewal a few years ago, it was renewed in such a way where they had to pay capacity fees initially for the historical usage that they had used under a previous emergency water service. So once they paid those capacity fees, they had a certain amount of water allotment that they could use. And if they used more than that, they had to pay additional capacity fees. Well, last year they reached a point where they ended up using significantly over their allotment and ended up with, they're currently at about $40,000 in terms of capacity fees. The other thing that happened with the agreement, it had an expiration date, which is next year, in June, I believe is what it says. And, but in the agreement, there isn't the assurance that if they pay these capacity fees, that they remain with the property. So they are in a position where they can pay $40,000 and then only have service for another year. So the property owner requested that maybe we revise the agreement so that they could, one, the capacity remains with the property, which this amendment has in there. It also basically just makes the agreement and the arrangement for auxiliary water service permanent. Yeah, and that's what the item is. Eric, do you have did I miss anything, do you think?
Only to add that if we were to assess like full capacity fees so that they could come on board as a full-time permanent customer, it would be, I don't have the numbers, but probably $1 million or, it would be a large sum. So this is a stepping stone for them to build in capacity as their well diminishes and they use more and more water, they pay for that so that at some point in the future, perhaps they will achieve full capacity. But right now, what they would be paying for is an additional 200 and some odd thousand. They'd have essentially about 500,000 gallon per year capacity, which really isn't very much. I mean, that's like 2 households. And on average, they only use this auxiliary connection for a few days each year. And so it's appropriate for them, and we feel like it isn't a big burden to our ratepayers. It provides, if they did have an emergency, they would be calling us anyway. And so this formalizes an arrangement that allows them to pay $40,000 without the risk of losing it, and allows us to move forward with some security and certainty.
Have they paid the 40,000?
No.
Not yet.
Does the Tamarin provides important housing, affordable housing for people, which we need in our community? And I know all over the state and beyond, we're worried about, losing these important mobile home parks. So I appreciate staff working with this group. I know they've had some real hardships before, but if we can help phase them in permanently, then they have a measure of security. That's an older mobile home park, and those are older folks. Any other words you have? You
No,
okay?
I agree, and send it on to the board.
Okay, so,
I did miss one item that the intention would be to record this agreement so that a future property owner, if they choose to sell it, would be aware of this arrangement so that it's, just kind of clear.
And you did say that it's now gonna be in a permanent agreement, correct?
Of course, that's the way that the agreement's been written up, yes.
Okay.
yeah, in years past, they've been kind of like Del Orto, asking us, it's just been bit of scramble to make sure that they have water. And I can only imagine from their standpoint, this does take the pressure off their well. Great, so we can go forward with the recommendation on that? Okay, yeah, thanks again for your clear explanations in your write-up, Antonio.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3, review agreement for water service to non-adjacent parcel Dew Temple.
Okay, so, so this, here we have a variance. It's a little bit different than a typical variance in that they're requesting a variance from section 6.02, which requires a public water main to be adjacent to the property. There's also another variance that we do, which is the non-adjacent meter. In this case, they requested water service because they're on a shared well with, I think it's 4 other properties. And the well historically in the past few years has had issues. So Mr. Dew Temple came to us looking for, what options the district could provide in terms of giving water service. Initially, we approached the project as a water main project because it seemed that, at the time makes sense. There are 3 properties potentially that could connect to a water main, this one, and then the Dew Temple property here. But these 2 property owners didn't want to participate at all. They don't want water service, and they don't want to participate in a main project. So Mr. Dew Temple requested, hey, I'd like to do this as a water service, not a water main, because I don't feel I need a water main. When I went actually with Matt and we looked at it, and Matt felt too at the time that, a water main 330 feet for one person didn't make a lot of sense. We also didn't see a need to extend the water main in the future at all up or down Keeley Drive. So it seemed to make sense from a staff perspective that, this approach is as a service lateral and not a water main, because the water main just seemed to make, it's going to increase our operational responsibilities and costs. So that's how we're presenting it as a service lateral to Mr. Dew Temple. It'll be probably sized potentially to serve other properties in the future. But for now, it's being presented as a variance to allow a service lateral instead of a main to the Dew Temple property. There will be a variance participation agreement or a mainline participation agreement in case someone does want to extend the public main or the district does, so that if the main is extended, that the Dew Temples will need to participate in that in the future. But again, we don't anticipate pursuing a project like that. It's just in case one of these other 2 property owners decided they wanted to.
And the same thing, then they would reimburse the Dew Temples if they bought into it.
Not in this case, no, because it's not a water main. So if the other people wanted to participate, they would just have to put a new service at the end of this existing line.
Oh, got you,
Yeah.
okay. And then where does that existing line tie into, to the west?
Yeah, so we have existing water main here. This is the old gopher tank site, which has been removed. So we have a water main here that continues down towards Gibbs Ranch. And so we're tying in above the pressure reducing station that's there, with a 2-inch line following our property line, obtaining a new easement from this property owner, private water line easement, district water, public utility easement, to this point adjacent to the Dew Temples, and his water main would be right here.
And, okay, so he's on a shared well. He wants to get off the well, and then those other properties around Kelly Drive are still on the well. They do
Correct.
not want to be on this.
Correct.
And they're gonna count on that well water?
Correct.
Then, okay, and they're probably hoping that they'll have a little more now that he's on.
Right, and he's been in discussions with them and just could get them to participate. This person, their home, even though they look fairly close, their houses, they all have about 5-acre pieces, and their home is the other end of the 5 acres. So they had to run a really long private water line in an area that they just don't desire to do so. this person, in my understanding, is a new home buyer and just couldn't be convinced to participate, so.
Okay. And that's the access to the TUD property right there, correct?
Well, actually, it comes around here, I should have put that on there, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, but in terms of constructability, this is what the property owner and their designer felt was the best
Okay.
path. It's suitable for us, you know, it could follow the road or it could have, it can go this direction. To us, it didn't matter, so this is the way they'd like to do it, so the way we're presenting it. This property owner here is in discussions and has verbally said they would support the project and dedicate the easement. They're just working on the letter. We'll have the letter for the board meeting. It may not be there for the agenda packet, but it'll be there. We'll have something signed by the meeting, a letter from this intervening property owner.
That's an easy construction area, correct?
Yes.
I mean, it's easy it's not on a steep side hill or anything like that.
Right.
And then, you said it's gonna be a 2-inch line?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about his meters? Meter would probably be a 1-inch meter though, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
In the district, we usually allow up to 4 connections on a 2-inch line, so.
That's where I was going with that.
Okay, yeah.
So those others could connect off that 2-inch line.
Exactly.
Without having to go back and reconstruct that whole thing. Right. Cool, okay.
Yeah, it's sort of a different concept than we normally present to you, but it seemed to make sense. You know, if they came to us, you know, as 3 and said we want to do a water main, we would say yes, but, you know, since they're not, and, you know, we don't want to maintain a water main if we don't need to.
So then they'll just pay capacity fees and just be brought on the system then.
Yeah, and then the others would have to construct their service and do everything to come from the existing main, so whether they have to get an easement, you know, from, yeah, I think it's Mr. Lawrence Leonard that lives here, they'll have to get their easements, to construct a service line for themselves, a meter box, and pay their capacity fee.
That, the property owner there that easement's crossing, where's his house located? Up to the north?
Near where these symbols are,
Mm.
up in here,
Up in there,
maybe a little
okay.
further. up
Does he
here.
have anything connected down to the west on that little L-shaped portion or not?
His meter is right here.
Okay, but down below that to the south?
No,
there's
this is
nothing in
just-
there.
Yeah, just bushes and
Okay.
trees.
Nobody's gonna be driving over it or
No.
tearing it up for any reason. Okay. Good. I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, okay, well, I think that we can recommend this from our committee to the full board to consider and approve. Okay. So this is consideration, item 4, of master meter agreement for temporary and intermittent potable water service by and between the Tuolumne Utilities District and the Miwok Village Mutual Water Company.
Very good. I'd like to start off by introducing our new assistant engineer, Elizabeth Merchant Wells. Elizabeth's here, and this is one of the projects she's undertaking. And so she's here to answer any questions and to observe. And then, of course, we have Matt, our water distribution superintendent, because he's also been very involved in our key lead on discussions with Miwok. So in summary here, the board authorized purchase of this triangular piece of land a few months back. And the intention was to replace this white fir tank, which is in the backyards of 3 different properties, not in good condition, and also the associated pump station with new facilities on the new parcel. The tank would also be enlarged so that it would take the capacity or consolidate the capacity we lost with the Zone 3 tank. So this new tank would replace this one and the downstream Zone 3 tank. And the pump station would also be replaced. So that's the project. The first sort of decision point we came to was, well, do we need to site, or does Elizabeth need to design this site so that it could accommodate 2 tanks? We know that we should always have 2 sources of storage for every pressure zone in our system, which is really hard to do because there will be a time when we need to drain that tank and blast and recoat it if we're dealing with steel tanks and not concrete tanks. And we can't reasonably maintain these facilities if there's just one. When we looked at the landscape and the fact that we're adjoining Miwok Mutual, the idea popped in our minds to see if, instead of planning for a second tank, which would be extremely costly and an operation and maintenance burden, only for a period of, say, 2 to 3 months each 15 years or 20 years when we need to actually recoat the tank, would we need this secondary supply or secondary storage? Perhaps Miwok could provide water to our customers during that time period of, say, 2 to 3 months at some unknown future date when we need to do maintenance on this tank. And we would coordinate that time period with Miwok so that it was a period of low demand. Matt checked with them about 2 primary things. Did they have storage facilities that were large enough? And I apologize because this doesn't show where those storage facilities are. They're up slope and over here off the page. And the answer was yes. They have 2 tanks, so they can properly maintain theirs, and they're large enough. And the second question was, are they at an elevation that would provide reasonable pressure to our customers so that we didn't have to deal with pumping? And the answer to that was also yes. So then it was, well, we should probably reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to get into an agreement for temporary intermittent water service. And we identified this interconnection location right here on Black Oak Drive, where there actually already is a water main in here. This is their system right here. They have a 6-inch line. This is our system right here. So by constructing a new line and a bi-directional water meter, meaning we can also feed water into their system. The pressures just happen to work out pretty well. It could be of value to them. It could be of value to us. It's a minimal upfront cost. Our crews can do this construction. We would solidify this now so that Elizabeth doesn't need to move this tank on the site and build retaining walls so that we could potentially build a second tank in the future and save our ratepayers a significant amount of money. That's it in a nutshell. The agreement obviously has a lot more in there about notifications, about indemnification. It's been reviewed by Jesse. And it is currently being reviewed by Miwok. We do have another agreement with Miwok for, the board may recall when we got rid of the Riddle tank, they served some of our customers there. So we do have precedent here, and they've been pretty easy to work with. We don't anticipate them changing very much. So we're coming to your committee now. There may be a very slight tweak before it goes before the board, but in a nutshell, it'll probably be essentially what you have in your packet.
I think this is a great idea. It's a mutual aid agreement, and I know that there's a lot of things that really need attention, and that money needs to go to some, I mean, 2 tanks is great, you know, we'd love to have 2 tanks, but it's just really prudent. So I really commend you guys for thinking about pulling in our partners on this one, because that's money that could be spent there's competing stuff rather than just build a second tank. So good, I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. No need to build a second tank, my goodness. We can just work this deal out with Miwok, and I'm sure they're you negotiated with them, you feel pretty confident that they're gonna be agreeable.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, yeah, this is a, yeah, easy one, this is an easy one,
Good thinking, whoever
Yeah.
collectively thought that.
good job.
Yeah, it's another great example of creative people thinking, outside, not outside the box, but just thinking about this thing long-term, what's in the best interest of this district, long-term. In this case, it's mutually beneficial to Miwok, and Miwok has already been a good partner of ours, so it's a great job.
Is it possible to run water back the other way if they needed it?
Yeah.
Is it good? You
Like
probably
five-
covered that in this one, but, yeah, that's good. That's really good.
So, yeah, great. So, the recommendation is authorize staff to agendize this item for consideration at a future board meeting. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And
Perfect.
I think all four of the items that were considered by the committee today, if we can, we're gonna try to put those on the next board agenda while they're fresh. And we've done most of the work, so I think you'll see those on the draft agenda.
Great. Well, thank you. Good work, you guys.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Is there anybody out there in our audience that may want to comment?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, no little hands going up?
No little hands going up.
Okay, great. Okay, well, and thank you, Matt and Elizabeth, for being here and being on hand in case we have some questions. So I think that's it for today, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so let's conclude this committee meeting.
Thank you.